within the next month. And but basically, I'm representing Cybereason, and we're very interested in advancing this standard. And I've been talking about it, evangelizing it, and I'd just like to get more into the details and also support Ladrina so she can resume, and also maybe I'll partner with her when that happens. So hope that answered your question.
No, that's great. That's wonderful. I'm glad that we're not, it's been a while since we've had a meeting, and I honestly am not even really sure where we left off. I mean, there were a couple other folks like Charles, I know that you've been on the first two calls, and I think Jason and Russ as well could give us some idea if you remember where we left off and how we move forward. I unfortunately do not remember.
Sure. Is it okay for me to give a quick blurb on our interest and a little recap on last time?
Perfect.
Okay. And so hi, everybody. My name is Charlie Frick. I'm from Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab. Paula Lewandowski and Keat Lee are also here with me. Keat and Paula, feel free to interrupt me if I'm going off topic, but essentially, one of the things that we're doing in our cyber research at the laboratory is we're sponsored by CISA's Cyber Threat Information Sharing Group, CTIS, and we've been working on concepts for machine readable indicators of adversary behaviors for a little while now. And what we're doing is some prototyping and experimentation in our environment for how to encapsulate a adversary behavior and a sequence of behaviors in STIX 2.0. Right now we're doing some custom objects for that. And what we're trying to do is essentially a level in between the indicator of compromise, which is a very kind of one-off short shelf life thing, and get something that's higher level than that, but a little bit more detailed than what we're finding in a STIX attack pattern, which are generally mapped to MITRE attack categories and subcategories. And the reason we're doing that is we feel that there's a middle ground there where you can have a sequence of activities that indicate the way certain adversary actions appear on a network. And we're looking at how to create detection objects so that you can have not just a sigma rule for one individual piece, but a series of queries and a correlation that can help you understand what pattern of things to search for and how to bend those together, regardless of your SIEM or log aggregator. And so that's some of the research that we're working on right now. Last meeting, we shared at a high level what we were aiming for. We're hoping at the end of this calendar year to have some more concrete examples that are approved for sharing with this group. Right now, we're still fleshing out some of the experiment details to make a couple more concrete examples that we could bring forward. But that's kind of one of the areas that we're heavily focused in and been very excited about this work for some time now. Paula, Keat, were there additional things you feel that I should have brought up with respect to the indicators of behavior work?
No, I think you covered it, Charlie, unless Keat has something to add.
I think you did a great job, Charlie. Thanks.
Yay. So that's the APL team. Over.
So perfect. So and then also on the call, I think that everyone but Russ and Jason, and if you guys just want to chat for a minute about your role in the OCA and your interest in IOB, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, so from our perspective, so I'll just take the IBM security perspective to start with, I guess. So we're extremely interested in IOBs for a number of different reasons. Everything that Charles described are areas that we are similarly working on internally. So and I'm always looking to try to figure out how to collaborate in the community around aspects like, I agree fully that what we have today in terms of MITRE attack pattern and being able to define chains of said attack patterns codified in sticks, it's kind of like a very brittle starting point, but it doesn't really get us where we need to be when it comes to sharing an IOB chain from an environment in a way that another entity or person could then consume it in their environment and go and look for it. So that's really, the problem area that Charles just described is exactly kind of where my head's been at for this working group is how can we create recommendations around how people should codify and share IOB chains, making use of existing standards like sticks and MITRE where applicable, but expanding on that as well, right? So that, vendors can then adopt those recommendations into their products and enable interoperability between them, and entities can engage in like IOB intelligence sharing and things of that nature. Charles, I'm interested in, so you mentioned be able to search for the chains in, platform agnostic ways. What tech are you using for that in your experiments?
Well, we're still fleshing it out, but essentially we've done a lot of, it's kind of thinking about it backwards because this is heavy R&D land for us, but we started looking at the individual behaviors that we needed to look for. We were doing in Splunk. We'd done some looking at with Elastic, and then we realized we wanted to abstract that up to Sigma. For those not familiar with the kind of Sigma rule format, Sigma XQ, I think is what you can look for on GitHub for that. And so we have a way to make Sigma queries for the individual pieces. And now we've been messing around. Right now we just have some homegrown stuff we've been playing with on how you would correlate that. Not sure if that's going to be the right way to do it or not yet, but we're thinking of how to basically make a nested JSON of those queries with correlation information in there to say how you would correlate that. Then translating that back, that's where we're still mucking with it a lot, and we don't know for certain yet. The first prototype we're doing, it will be probably Splunk, but
yeah, because I mean, this is very, very much aligned to what we're doing with Stick Shifter and Kestrel and the OCA.
Yeah, Kestrel's on our roadmap to be. We were planning to look at that too. We just had started with this kind of unifying Sigma stuff, and then we looked at Kestrel and we're trying to decide whether we wanted to try it with that.
Yeah, the
When you-
benefit. Sorry, go ahead.
Jason, this is Dave. I was actually going to ask how they're defining, like how they're qualitative and quantitatively defining associations for correlation.
Yeah.
Is it just purely chronological? Is it?
No.
Right. I didn't assume it was, but I was wondering what other criteria you were using initially, because the more complexity, right? The more enumerated the complexity you have, the more richness you get in terms of qualifying things as being suspicious or not, so that you define behaviors more clearly, right?
Exactly. Right now, it's still pretty simple that chronological host and user identity are the big ones that we're looking at for correlations.
Right.
And I hate speaking in such, generalities. It's just the joys of public release on what we're allowed to like give out yet while we're still building it.
Gotcha.
Hopefully we get over that fast, but those are the main areas that we're looking at right now, because we're just really doing our first batch of testing correlations out. I'm giving
that's
Keith
fair.
a heart attack as I describe all this. He has to build it.
Yeah, I know, entity and source stuff. I get it.
Yeah. And
Okay, thank you.
oh, sure. And And so that basically we're thinking, a combination of endpoint and network-based logs. So I don't mind telling you guys, we're mostly focusing on this first wave with Sysmon events and Zeek alerts as our two main sources of alerts from our test environment. And we're trying a few different, the goal is we're trying an attack. We're building out one notional attack, extracting behavior sequences from that, and then modifying a fresh attack that would have different indicators of compromise, but follow some similar steps and see if that shared sequence of behaviors and the detections could work for the second attack.
Charles, I got a
Yeah,
quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. I understand the whole like aggregating or correlating off the specific entities that you described, but are you guys looking at doing anything with like entity pairs so you can kind of reduce noise and get
Yes.
more specific? Okay.
Absolutely. That's the whole purpose of it. Because like we're also in our test bed setting up some basic user emulation to generate a lot of background noise, because we want to start tuning these type of detections, because everything
That's what I was
works,
gonna.
everything works great when the
Yeah,
only thing
that's-
on the network is the attack.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the other thing I was going to suggest is like exactly what you're saying around entity grouping, is because Zeek, well, you'll run into issues with Zeek at scale,
Yes.
primarily because of the amount of noise that's produced, as you're suggesting, and grouping will help reduce some of, not all of it, but some of it, and it'll give you a higher ceiling. But I don't know how high that ceiling will go. Some university systems that have tried it at scale, it didn't work, and they had a very cheap workforce.
Yes.
So, but just some interesting things to watch out for.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Those are some of the major concerns we've got. But we were first trying to figure out the plumbing of how to package these things together, as well as investigating the false alarm rate and the quality of the correlations.
Right. That makes sense, because you can always swap out whatever sensor mechanisms or even things that initially mechanisms you're using for initial analysis, that you can always swap those things out with other technologies that scale better.
Exactly. And so we just thought this would be a good first run, because it was also good to try and use things that are either open source or very prolific, hence the Sysmon part, just as
completely agree.
as a UARC. We didn't want, when we get this stuff approved to share publicly, we didn't want to come off as endorsing anything. That's also why a big part of the Sigma part. I'm not trying to tell everybody to go buy Splunk. It's just we needed something to start with.
Right. No, I completely agree with that. Yeah, try to look for open source if you can, because then you're at least giving something for people to swap out.
Exactly. But I appreciate the back and forth. It's nice to know, there's a bunch of us all trying to come at this problem. I'll be quiet now because I have a tendency to dominate the conversation. It's a character flaw.
It's not a character flaw. Thank
Oh,
you, Charlie.
Give it time.
Thank you, Charlie. You've been great, and we are really so grateful that you are bringing this into our community so that we can help with it and also use it in our greater mission. I think it's always really hard, and Russ is really the master at trying to pull all this stuff together. What can this group of people that are working on this, how can we elevate, the work that you're doing? What I was thinking, Charlie, is how, again, I know that some of this is sensitive in terms of how much you could share, but it would be great if you could write a blog, and we would be more than happy to push it out to all of our channels and post it on the OCA website, just to give everybody an idea of what this work group is doing, because we haven't really made a fully fleshed out, not so much an announcement, but just, really what is this group doing? I mean, I think that's probably a pretty good idea. What do you think, Jason?
Like yeah, like we need I think, and we're gonna have to do the same thing for Zero Trust at some point soon. Like we need a mission statement right?
Mhm.
And what we're trying to achieve, you know, if it is what we kind of spitballed earlier around, you know, defining a rough consensus around IOB sharing, right? Around encoding and sharing, leveraging attack patterns and other things, and how to go and look for these and collaborate on them in a community. Is it some kind of white paper around that? You know, are we saying, do we want to like try to create a standard, a rough standard for that? You know, that I think those are open questions that we need to try to figure out about what we want to set for goals for like 6 months, 9 months for the working group. I don't, does that make sense?
I think so.
Yeah, I agree.
On the blog front, I think we'll be able to get there. Like I said, we just need to finish our first experiment, and then we're pretty good at rapidly turning stuff out on getting public release approvals once we have the completed package reviewed by our CISA sponsors. And then if they don't object, because a lot of us come from the Integrated Adapted Cyber Defense Project, and we maintain a public site there. And that'll be a place where we can host some deeper dives into this type of work. We've done that before through like
Right.
white papers and such, and I think we can probably get something there. It just take us a couple months. Because we have to
That's,
finish
yeah,
the
that's
first wave.
great. And we can, you know, since we have a kind of a loose collaborative relationship with IACD, we could cross post and,
Yep.
you know, cross elevate it, which I think is great for both communities. And like I said, we've done it in the past, so. And I
And-
think that way we're gonna get more eyeballs on it.
Fully agree. And I'm not trying to like bulldoze the route forward for this working group. But yeah, we're really committed to representing some of this in sticks. If the working group, as we work through our charter and mission statement, if we think that is a good route for the IOB working group, I think that then we can start looking at how a partnership with the Sticks working group at Oasis. And just throwing Charlie Frick's opinion, we're a little ways from it, but I also think that we'll need to eventually talk to the Cacao working group, because I imagine sharing response workflows is deep on the horizon for this.
Yeah, I
once you
mean,
get
I think
it.
I think the good news is we have the right mixture of people who are involved in all of those groups. So, and you know, I think the nice thing about the OCA, we have the mixture of people from Cacao, from the CTITC, and we have, you know, because it's an open project, we can enable collaboration around this stuff without folks having to go and join those TCs, which is sometimes a barrier, right?
Yeah.
Like in order to collaborate on sticks in the CTITC, because of the way the IP works, you have to join it and you have to potentially pay to join it. You know, if you're
Yes.
not a US government sponsor, and not all entities and startups and whatnot, that's a burden sometimes, but you don't have to do that in the OCA because it's an open project. It makes it easier. If the people who want to collaborate are not in those TCs, it makes it easier.
Yeah, and as Jason said, other groups, like the architecture group is already leveraging the Cacao and obviously Stick Shifter is already part of OCA and OpenC2 and what have you. So there are lots of folks from the OpenC2 technical committee that are very active in the OCA. So it's working out really well to cross-use this stuff. So let's see. So I'm not sure where else we should go with this. I mean, I think probably the other people on the call that, you know, really have a very central interest. Scott, I mean, what are you thinking about what you've heard so far?
I mean, it's interesting to hear some of the work that, Charles was referencing as far as kind of how they're building things out and testing some things. But, I've been a part of different types of conversations like this, not specific on this topic, and always have a difficult time wrapping my head around on, well, how do you get extra hands on these problems to help collaborate, other than just exchanging ideas? So that's always a question I have is, if there is something to help test, something to help provide information other than just feedback on product, what does that look like?
Well, that's a, that's a known problem. We've worked really hard to get folks involved in the OCA. Russ runs an architecture group, and membership started relatively low, and now it's really exploding, and it's got great contributions by a number of companies. I just think when companies find that what's being developed is so significant and integral to what their mission is, then people commit. That's really how it's going for us, pretty much. So it's been all organic.
And
you're
sorry,
right.
Scott, just because it's not, I can't tell from the Zoom, and apologies, but which organization are you with? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I work with Cyborg Security. We focus on threat hunting, content, and services.
Awesome. Thanks. No, I'm sorry. You can't really tell from Zoom. And I didn't recognize the voice.
Yeah, no worries. This is my first call here, so yeah.
So Charles, what is the timeline for, I don't remember your term, the release of the work,
Oh, sure.
or what have you? Do you have a
So,
rough timeline?
yeah.
planned?
So this first experiment, we should be wrapping up in December. And we are meeting pretty regularly with CISA. I can't promise I'll have a public released white paper and blog in December, but I expect to have one by late January, provided everything comes through. It's just the nature of, we do our experiments kind of on 3-month schedules. And so have to complete it and show the results and make sure that everyone's okay with putting up the write-up. I don't expect a roadblock, but I just can't guarantee anything yet because of the way the contract's set up.
No problem. And are there any activities that, members of the OCA here could do to assist you with that? Like, is there, in between when you say finish the experiment and deliverable and writing, like, is there something where it's like, wow, it'd be great if other third parties could validate the approach, or before we blog about it, or something like that?
I think so. So I just have to ask my sponsor, and I'm talking to him on a couple of times this week. So I think I can mostly get an agreement there, where then we could share some, I don't know where we want to share this yet, but we could share some deeper level insights to kind of vet some things with the group.
Okay.
And I think that would be the right thing to do before publishing a blog, like, at least advertising a blog.
Yeah.
I mean, it might end up being a blog, but we could restrict it if needed, or if, I don't know if OCA has a environment where we could kind of post some of that type of collaboration stuff. I know looks like you guys use G Suite pretty heavily, but we're open to however.
So we use, it's like a mix. So so Oasis has G Suite, which is really more for the marketing stuff.
Okay.
For most of the stuff in OCA, we just use GitHub and various facilities in GitHub.
Okay.
If there was something that, if what you're asking, is there a way that we can have like a more tight knit collaboration around something without it being in the public?
Yeah, I was thinking like
We
a
can figure that
Confluence,
out.
something like not picking Confluence, but something like that.
Yeah, we could brainstorm on that. I mean, there's a number of different things we could try to do.
So Charles, one of the questions I kind of been thinking about when you talk about, you're obviously trying to be platform agnostic and you guys are using Sigma with what you kind of have in development to kind of group behaviors together and kind of put it out in Sigma. Are you able to use the native like master branch of Sigma, or have you guys kind of had to develop to that and kind of branch off of what Sigma already has there?
So we're still figuring that. We haven't branched yet. And
Okay.
But yeah, there's definitely, that's where we've been struggling with the best way to do the correlation. So like what we have right now, I know isn't the final right answer. We've been playing with just some Python that we've had here to run to store the rules and run and check the correlations that way. That's probably not the right approach, but we were starting with that to see what we needed to change. Sigma by itself, yeah, there's an issue when you have multiple things you want to search for. At least that's how we've seen it. And that was also what got Kestrel on our roadmap, but I'm not sure if that'll solve the problem or not yet, because we haven't gotten to play with it yet.
It
And then,
it should help a lot there. I mean, the main foundational difference with what Stick Shifter tries to do and what Sigma tries to do is that Stick Shifter, it's like the complete end to end. So it's not just matching, right? So it's actually connecting to the device, doing the query, getting the results, and then translating them back the other way so that they all come out in sticks. And then you can run Kestrel over top of it. Whereas Sigma is just doing the first part. It's just translating to the native, what have you, right? It doesn't actually go and run it.
Correct.
right.
So that's the big difference. And then there's, obviously trade-offs there in terms of, because it's less complex, there's a lot more adapters and et cetera, et cetera.
Was the output for all these to be alert based or report based when you actually run these behavioral like detections?
We've been pretty heavily focused on network defense use cases. So we've been going more towards alert based.
Okay.
But I think that's another discussion that should be had in a community like this, because I'm not trying to downplay the intelligence mission, because I think that's huge, but we haven't been focusing as much on how to encapsulate the report. I mean, basically, we've been looking at how to thread this stuff into a Unit 42 adversary playbook style. Because when we're looking at things like Magellan and what the CTA is using, we thought that might be the best way, since we're kind of sticks focused, to do it.
Yeah, I just think of when I think of behaviors versus indicators, like indicators, when it exists, it's like binary, right?
Yep.
But with a behavior, especially in a group of behaviors, an adversary that might do things over a period of time, and not all behaviors are present within a tight window. It makes sense to kind of have that, here's a list of behaviors you look for over a period of time, and here's a report to show you the aggregation for how prevalent each behavior is, especially centralized around single entities.
I think that's yes.
Yeah, and that adds a lot of gravity, right? But it's tough, because then it's like, well, when do you run these reports and for what span? And that's kind of the decision that, I don't know, that's almost like environment specific. Versus the alert thing, that's when you deal with a lot of extra noise that you're trying not to introduce more of, right?
And that's kind of where, like, I've been trying to think about the graph of what that would look like. And that's part of wanting to have the behavior sets, or the behaviors hold relationships to attack patterns, thinking that might be a spot where you can start pivoting out across envisioning a larger ecosystem of these threat intelligence objects. That might give you a common place to link up and start seeing how that ties up to different adversaries and different campaigns.
Right, and visualization is a great way to do report-based stuff, right?
Yep.
Because then it's more, you can make it interactive, as well as you can kind of add an extra layer of intelligence on top.
Yeah, and on the visualization front, we've mostly just been using the Stix visualizer and some Neo4j prototypes. That the Neo4j is pretty simple.
Yeah, like Neo4j.
But that's kind of how we been starting with it, because thinking that gives you a route to start building those more complex things.
Right.
But that's many months down the road for us to do a lot with that. And that could be a good place to leverage some of this community.
Okay.
Paula and Keith, shut me up if I'm writing too many checks with my mouth that you have to cash.
Not yet. I think we're good.
You're a considerate man, Charlie.
Well, Paula and Keith outrank me.
So let's see. So I think we've made good progress. Maggie, what do you think? I don't know how much you had conversation with Ladrina. I know that both of you have had your hands full, whether or not she had some sense of, what her objectives were for the next couple of calls. That's question number one. And question number two, do we try and set a call? It's the end of October for November, maybe one more before the end of the year.
So this call, I admit, I was mostly just trying to get the lay of the land. She did not leave me objectives, but I can definitely check with her. She will be back, but it will be at the end of November, but I'm happy to participate in another call until then. Yeah. So I can brief her fully when she's back.
Okay. No, we understand.
Sorry, I have to go 1 second.
Okay. So do we feel like we want to have another meeting before then, or what would be we've got so many meetings in the certain that we're using everyone's time wisely.
Well, I think it was important if it was Jason or Scott or somebody else who said it, I apologize if I got the wrong attribution here, but that mission statement and charter, that's probably a good thing for us to probably have a meeting on, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree. Like, I don't know if, so first question, I guess, so there is a mailing list for this, correct?
Yep.
Dee? So,
Yes.
and is everyone on the call on the mailing list and receiving the messages? Because if so, what I might suggest is we could get something on the calendar for, late November, and in between now and November, try to hash out a mission statement and set of goals, and then use the actual call as go over what we've been hashing out on the mailing list type of thing, as opposed to wait until end of November to get started. I think we can get started asynchronously on the mailing list. That's my suggestion.
That's great. I think that's a really good suggestion. The only one who's not on the list is Scott. And if you would like to be on the list, because I think that at least will be where we'll start to, certainly pull people together and get a collection of people that are focused on doing this before the meeting, just let me know. I'd be more than happy to send you an invitation. Again, it's an open list. It's a discussion list. We also have Slack channel, which Scott, I don't think that you're on the Slack channel, the OCA Slack channel either. We do have a channel for IOB, so that's another way, but I do think it would be great if we could start, with the discussion list to do this. So that's great. I'm more than happy to take that as an action item to start the conversation. And then we're thinking about sometime late in November. So that's far enough off. I should probably just poll people, or should we try and fix a time here?
Poll's probably a good idea, just because of the holiday season and all.
Okay.
And I appreciate the mailing list along with the Slack channel, because we're in the dark ages here at the lab, and Slack, we can get to Slack, but it's not something that we're always on.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
get that.
God
Yeah,
bless you. You're fortunate to not be on it all the time.
That just means I have 4 alternatives to Slack that I have to run simultaneously all day long.
That's true. I have all 5.
I'm so
was
sorry.
gonna say, Slack doesn't mean that there are fewer channels.
Yeah, that's the problem, right?
Exactly.
I think that was the hope. Okay, so I'm just gonna send out a message to the group, and Scott, again, let me know if you want an invitation to that, just saying that we're gonna, get a group together, to start, really
Yeah, I'm open to
fleshing
that.
out. Okay, okay, all right.
Mhm.
Hold on, Scott, let me just put my email address, because I just checked real quick and I don't think I have yours. But otherwise, I think everyone else is on the list. And I know that there are other people as well that we can get involved in this.
Is that your email in the chat right there?
That's me. Yeah, I'm D. I'm Oasis over here. I'm the Zoom team.
I'll send you a message real quick via email.
Super, super. Okay, terrific. All right, so I'll just announce what we went over today and try and get some other folks engaged, and let's start working on this. I think it would be great.
Yeah, great
Make some
idea.
forward movement. Okay, terrific. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate it. You will see some stuff come across the list.
Fantastic.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody.
Yep,
Bye.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.